Just to add a little bit of new material, it's interesting that earlier in the Gospel of John, we are told on a number of occasions that Jesus has not yet been glorified. So his glory is still in his pre-crucifixion days and pre-resurrection days was still a glory in prospect, as we've been reminded. Now, there will be some people who will say, but you need to look at the words of the text in John 17:5, where it says quite clearly, the glory which I, that is me, myself, and I had with you, Father, before the world began. So there are some people who may object and say, well, it would appear that Jesus is clearly claiming a personal pre-existence there. And of course, the same over in the end of John chapter 17, where he talks about how the Father has loved me before the foundation of the world. So how do we get around this very good and reasonable question about Jesus being loved personally by his Father before the world began? Now, it's interesting that, to add to what's already been said, there are other places in the scriptures where we are told that God loved people before they were born and before they had reached their stage or the world history stage. For example, in Romans chapter 9, the Apostle Paul, in speaking about God's predetermined plan again, and his election, or his pre-knowledge or foreknowledge, in Romans chapter 9:11, he's talking about the twins who were in the womb, not yet born, he says, and they had not done anything, whether good or bad, so that God's purpose, according to his choice, might stand. And he goes on then to say, verse 13, just as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. So here we have a clear, I believe, example of God loving, as in the meaning of choosing and predetermining a course of destiny for an unborn child. God loved Jacob in that sense. And I think it's the same sense, as we've been reminded, very Hebrew way of thinking, that even before birth, a man or a woman can be chosen and loved by God before their ministry begins. You have the same thought, of course, in Jeremiah chapter 1, where the Lord says concerning Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you and appointed you to be a prophet to the nations. There are many other examples where it is said that God loved and knew someone who had a particular destiny before they were born. This is none other than what Jesus himself, very Hebrew thinking, is claiming for himself in John 17:5, and I believe verse 24 as well.